Are you looking to take your personal finances to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not, with your host, Joseph Sangle.
Well, welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. My name is Joseph Sangle, your host today, and we are so excited to help you on a Monday be able to implement one right now relevant financial tip to help you win with your money long term. We know that money is a journey, not just one moment. And today we are on episode number
147.
And that is the voice of my co-host, Megan Hibbard. Are you fired up today?
Yes.
Can you believe this is the last episode in April?
I cannot. May is coming
Good
quickly.
night. That means a third of the year is over. So let's ask the question, everybody, really fast. Let's just dive right in. Have you made progress in your financial journey so far this year? A third of it is gone. G-O-N-E.
Everyone
gone.
Makes those resolutions in the beginning.
There we go.
Have they stuck?
Hey,
with
but they're
your
listening
finances?
to podcasts. They're listening to podcasts. We know they're making progress.
Yes.
It's awesome. Are you making progress?
Yes.
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 Yes. I'm making progress. Making some progress. Making some deals happen. It's good.
I bet some people got some life insurance this past week after last week's
We're super excited.
episode.
Fully funded life has exploded. We've hit our first goal.
Yeah.
How awesome is that?
It is awesome.
Boom. And so super excited about what that is. Encourage everybody to check it out at fullyfunded.life. Today, we're going to talk about one of the things that we're becoming increasingly passionate about around here at I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. I've been practicing it for years, but I wanted to test it to see if our teaching would be any good.
There you go.
So tell everybody what we're going to talk about.
Yes. So today we're talking about how to teach your kids about debt. So our question is, I'm trying to teach our children about financial concepts. Some topics are easy, but others, yikes. Can you help us explain debt to our children?
Yes.
A little tricky.
Yeah. So this is something that's really important, teaching our kids about money, all aspects of money. And sometimes we don't realize what we're teaching them because we're not intentional with it. And so we're doing this series, they're not one after another. We're sprinkling them in throughout the year on how to teach your kids about, and it's a money topic. And today we get to talk about debt, So we're super excited to talk about that. Before we do that, we're going to go to one of my favorite sections of the podcast. You know what time that is. Let's go.
Now it's time to get caught up with our current money events.
The Monday Money Tip Podcast is sponsored by the Fully Funded Life Membership Program. The Fully Funded Life Membership Program provides all you need to begin winning with money and live a fully funded life. Fully Funded Life includes 4 key components: courses, challenges, coaching, and community. Courses provide financial education. Challenges help you make massive progress in a specific money skill. Coaching is provided by the Fully Funded Life certified coaches through open office hours held multiple times each month. All of the courses, challenges, and coaching results in an outstanding community that help equip, motivate, and encourage you to take your next financial steps toward your fully funded life. Fully Funded Life, courses, challenges, coaching, community. All that's missing is you. Learn more and receive a special offer for Monday Money Tip listeners today at fullyfunded.life/MMT. That's www.fullyfunded.life/MMT. All right. Well, for today's current money event section, woo! Is that awesome?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a
excellent.
new one.
Hey, we're now 153 episodes from you singing current money events. She promised in episode 300 that she's going to sing. Today, I'm going to talk about your Social Security statement. Very exciting. I know. But you should go to ssa.gov and pull up your statement. Now, I know in the last episode, I mentioned this briefly, but I wanted to dive into it more because I went in preparation for this episode number
147. Yeah.
I went on here and when I pulled up my statement.
There you go.
And so if you've not subscribed to this, you can do this for free. We have a Google Calendar. It's publicly available called the IWBNIN calendar. And maybe you can include a link. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't even know how I did it. I know I created it. And then it's got reminders through the year to do different financial things. And one of them is
We often ask
pull
ourselves
up your Social
that.
Security statement.
How did you What did you do?
What did Joe do? Yeah. But it said, Joe, pull up your Social Security account statement. So I did. And they had a special document for me. It's an amazing document. It said, fact sheet for workers ages 18 to 48. So I'm grateful I still fit in that category. I don't have much longer. But here are some interesting one-liners that they had in my fact sheet. It was a PDF, and I printed it out. It's pretty good. You ready for some one-liners?
Yes.
Okay. It said, retirement is not one size fits all. File me under shocked. Okay. Turns out if you're living in San Francisco, your cost of living is a little different than Anderson, South Carolina.
Yes.
You know, for what cost a square foot of land in San Francisco, you could probably buy about a square mile in South Carolina. I like that. Here's another statement. Your Social Security statement contains information about your earnings history and the Social Security and Medicare taxes you paid and provides estimates for future retirement, disability, and survivor benefits. Now, I knew that, but I want to make sure our listeners understand what that says. It contains all of your earnings history and Social Security and Medicare taxes you paid. You want to verify that that is correct. There is a filing. Megan may or may not know that, but if you're an employer, you know about Form 941. And you have to file, which means when we pay people, we withhold money for Social Security and Medicare, and then we have to match it. Right. So it's 6.2% for FICA, for Social Security, 1.45%, which totals up 7.65% of your pay is withheld for Medicare. So 1.45% for Medicare, 6.2% for Social Security. Your employer has to match that. It doubles it. So you would get 7.65% of your money is withheld from your check, and then the employer has to put another 7.65% with it. So 15.3% of your pay is being sent on your behalf to help fund your retirement. That's a lot of money.
It is.
Kind of goes with what we're saying. You know, if you want to retire well, save 10%. If you want to retire wealthy, 15%. It's like the government already knew this. Now, you want to make sure that that is recorded on your Social Security statement. Because if it's not, your employer may or may not have forwarded the dollars they withheld from your check to Social Security.
Yikes.
And let me tell you, if you as an employer don't forward that money rapidly, they'll come up literally with locks and chains and shut your business down. So you'll be glad to know, Megan, we've been forwarding your Social Security and your Medicare taxes.
Appreciate that.
Okay. But there's something else interesting it said there, disability and survivor's benefits. Social Security is more than just for retirement. If you have someone become disabled, and if you become disabled and you've paid into Social Security, you have access to SSDI, which is different than SSI. And SSDI will provide disability insurance benefits to you, in addition to any disability insurance you had in a private policy. And we provide long-term disability here at I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. And we also, it has survivor's benefits. So it also functions for minor children in the house and their caregiver, when most cases would be your spouse, will pay a certain amount every month, tax-free. It's a huge number for people to think about when they're thinking about having life insurance, which we talked about in episode 146. Here's another one-liner. Social Security is not to be your only source of income in retirement. Does that shock you?
That is something.
Okay. Yeah, they said that line. Okay. Here's another line. On average, Social Security will replace about 40% of your annual pre-retirement earnings. 40%. Although this can vary substantially based on each person's circumstances. And then it had another one-liner. It said, Joseph, your full retirement age is 67. Starting retirement benefits before your full retirement age, as early as age 62, lowers this percentage, and starting benefits after your full retirement age, up to age 70, increases it. That's important to know.
A little incentive.
And then Social Security is not meant to be your only source of income in retirement.
They really want to make sure you know that.
So they really want you to know, hey, you should be planning outside of this. And then you realize why they're saying this.
Yeah.
They said, hey, Joseph, in 2035, Social Security will still be able to pay about $790 for every $1,000 in benefits scheduled.
Ooh.
File that under yikes. So I call on, once again, our elected officials to fix this problem. And by the way, it can be fixed without a whole bunch of extra taxes. So fix it without a whole bunch of extra taxes. And that's it for today's current money events section. Pull up your Social Security statement. Do it today. You owe it to yourself and your future self.
All right. Our success story this week is from Carolyn. And she said, when I spoke to you at my church's FLE, so that's our financial learning experience that we do at churches, she said I had 13 credit cards with other things that were holding me back from having a margin. I wanted you to know that I've paid off 11 of those cards, and in 3 months, I'll be finished with the last 2. I also have paid off half of another bill, which will be finished in 3 months, and I'll start double payments on the car after that. So she said, so praise the Lord, I'm doing it, and it feels so great.
Like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So, Carolyn, first off, way to go. I echo Megan here. But you spoke to me at the church's financial learning experience. You had 13 credit cards. And you had some other things that are holding you back. I don't know what the other things are, but I love the honesty here, because if we're all being clear, when we are doing poor with finances, there are always other things.
Right.
Maybe relationships, maybe other obstacles, could be addictions. I don't know what it is, but there were some other things. Somehow she's defeated the other things, and she's paid off 11 of the cards, and in 3 more months, we'll be done with the last 2. Paid off half another bill. It's all going to be done in 3 months. And then start double payments on the car.
That's a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So as we always say around here at the Money Tip Podcast, our podcast is powered and fueled by your success. And thank you, Carolyn, for writing that in. Hey, I bet it felt great to type that in and send that to us. And it'll feel even greater when she pays off that car. So way to go. You're going to be done with rung 4 very soon. Mm-hmm. Shortly after that, rung 5, you'll be on your way to surplus. That's awesome.
Okay, our question for today is, I'm trying to teach our children about financial concepts. Some topics are easy, but others, yikes. Can you help us explain debt to our children?
Well, yes, we can. And I love talking about this topic because I think there's something interesting that happens. You're early on in your parenting journey.
I am.
You have this little man running around and probably in charge of the household more than you want to admit.
Yeah.
And he's so cute and handsome.
He is.
And he's had his first haircut, I think. Did I see he had his first haircut?
He's had multiple.
Yeah, multiple haircuts. Mm-hmm. And that always makes mama sad because it means the little man is growing up and all this stuff. But debt seems like a foreign concept to teach to a 2-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
It really does. However, it's important that he understands about debt before he leaves the household. Would you agree?
Yes.
Now, I remember having ideas on how I would teach this to kids, but then I thought to myself, this would be really helpful if you tried this out on your kids before you started propagating information that hasn't been unproven. And so I've tested this. And so my 21-year-old daughter, we're going to have her appear on an episode soon. We'll see if anything that her dad said is correct. But I've tested that one. I've got an 11-year-old, got a 7-year-old. And so I think this stuff works. It's proven with one child. So it's not a big sample size.
You could just say it's an option.
But it's also acquired knowledge from observing thousands of their parents with their kids.
Yeah.
And being honest, coaching thousands of grown kids and what they wish they had known about money.
Right.
So that's where all this stuff is coming from. So what I really want you to do, and we're going to write this up in the show notes and encourage you to print it out. But in reality, the first thing I want you to know is that debt, the definition of debt, and that is debt really, as a definition, is an amount of money borrowed by one party from another. That's really what debt is. Hey, someone or some entity has given me money and I've borrowed it, which means I have to return it, many times with interest. A lot of times this starts with owing mom and dad, or we owe a brother or sister. We borrowed something from them and we have to give it back. So when we think about it from a financial standpoint, it's money that's been borrowed. Some people owe a lawnmower to their family member because they borrowed a lawnmower. Make sense? So that's what debt is. And helping them understand that is hugely important. So how do you explain debt to your children? You help them by understanding the definition. Hey, debt is when I took money, I borrowed money from someone else, And now mom and dad, they have to repay it. It has to be paid back. And by the way, they're making me pay extra back, called interest. So tell them, tell everybody who's listening, what is one key way that parents could help explain this concept of debt to their children?
Yeah. And I mean, one way is to be open with your financial journey. And so, I mean, I also think it doesn't have to be this complicated thing. I think a lot of times when we think about debt, we see this like overwhelming thing of how are we going to, I don't know how I'm going to explain that. There's interest and there's this and there's payments and all this stuff. But the way that you explained it just then was so easy for someone to explain that I feel like a 3-year-old could understand that concept. You know, I borrowed money and I have to pay it back.
Right.
And then I have to pay back more because they let me have it. They let me borrow it and I have to pay it. You know, like simple ways. We don't have to get complicated with it. I think that's a key thing of becoming super basic with it when you're explaining it to your kids, but not overcomplicating it, just making it easy to understand.
And I think your kids understand you.
Yeah.
Kids understand their parents. You know, kids know the sound of their parents' voice. They know when their parent is upset. They know when they're really upset. They know when they're happy. And the same thing in the way that you refer to debt, because money is emotional and money is spiritual, the way that you relate to debt matters a lot. And so be open with your own financial journey. And so what does that really mean? That means if you have a car payment, show them the car payment and say, hey, a bank gave us money so that they actually gave the money to the car dealer. The car dealer, in exchange, let us have this car. We now have this car. We are the owners of the car, but we have to pay this money back with interest. And so show them your car payment and say, we're paying it off. We owe this much more. We're paying this much interest. We own half the car. Invite them to join you as you pursue your rung for debt freedom, like paying off credit cards, paying off student loans, paying off mom and dad, paying off a brother or sister. And another way is to make it visual. How can we make it visual?
Yeah, so we have created a lot of what we call payoff spectaculars. So if you have a car you're trying to pay off, if you're trying to pay off a student loan or a credit card or TV, furniture, whatever it is that you're trying to pay off, we have a picture created that you can color in different squares as you pay off certain amounts. So depending on how much you owe would depend on how much each square is worth. So that's a great way. Print it out. Your kids can see it on their fridge or wherever you pay your bills. And then you can let them color in the square. Hey, today we get to color in 3 squares because mom and dad paid this much money back. So it's a great way to invite them in to that about making it fun and like a visual thing where they can see, oh, we only have 10 squares left, and then we get to do, maybe you get to do something fun when you pay it off. So
yeah, and you can even take the next step. As your children get older, you know, you're thinking in the context of your child who's 2. You know, I'm thinking in the context of my 21-year-old, my 11-year-old, and my 7-year-old. You know, the way that you educate them is different. So my 11-year-old, my boy, like, you know, I don't have debts, you know, related to the car or anything like that, but I do carry some debt on an investment property, on a real estate property. And so I've brought him into that process of saying, I have this debt. I got this debt because it's of the 4 types of debt. It's the best debt to have. It has positive cash flow, generates income every month for us. And so I show them that. So I'm open with that financial journey. I know that he can handle it. I know that he can have that concept. He knows I borrowed money from the bank. He knows that I have to pay the bank back. He knows, hey, that also allows us to produce rental income that allows us to repay it. And then making it visual is really cool. You know, kids, even at age 2, 3, they understand, hey, these little squares here, hey, each square equals $100 of debt. And I just paid $100. So let's go color in a square. Letting your kid color in the square is inviting them to your financial journey. Okay? So be open with your own financial journey. I know a lot of parents, they don't want to admit it because they got teenage kids and they don't want to admit that they don't have it together, that they've struggled with money their whole life. In some ways, they may even try to blame their kids. I say flip it and just invite your kids to the journey and say, hey, we didn't know about this stuff, but now we're listening to the podcast, we're going to events, we're reading books, we're going to get good at money, and we want you to avoid making the same mistakes mom and dad did and invite them into it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. When you're open with your own financial journey, a lot of people think they're protecting their kids by not sharing their debt issues. You're not protecting them at all. In fact, you're doing them a great disservice. And when you share this and when you start crying, saying, I've tried to pay off this credit card for the last 7 years, and we're finally making progress, and I see a path to get out of this. Let me tell you something. That leaves a mark in your kid's life, and it helps them learn. Okay?
Yeah.
So
I would say also chances are good that if you have a teenage kid, high school or something like that, they probably know. So they probably sense that something's not
They already
right.
know something's up.
Yeah. So the fact that you would let them into that is probably building that relationship even greater, where they're going to trust you more, and then they're going to, be able to listen more because you've been open with them. So
100%.
Yeah. My 2-year-old probably doesn't understand, but your high schooler, the chances are really great that they already sense something is up.
And you're doing them no disservice. I'll just say it again, by keeping it hidden. The next thing that you can do as you teach them about debt is to connect the dots when they borrow money from you or a sibling. So did you ever borrow from your sister? Did you ever do that?
Like money from her?
Yeah. Like money to buy something. Hey, I'm at the store. I don't have my money. I need to borrow money from you.
Maybe. I don't remember it like a certain situation.
So you don't have any trauma. I can tell that.
Yeah,
You don't have any trauma.
No.
But I've had it where, the 11-year-old didn't have money. The 7-year-old did have money. He needed to borrow, and now he's in debt till he gets home.
Yeah,
to his sister, which drives him crazy. Or he's in debt to me.
Yeah.
But I know he has money at home, so he borrows it from me. And I say, you're in debt to me now. And I, of course, don't charge interest. But I encourage them to repay the money right away, as soon as they get home. Because I'm teaching them this concept. You've borrowed money. That was not your money. That was your sister's money. That was my money. Now you owe me. Hey, let's pay that off as rapidly as possible. You don't like that feeling of owing me. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So whenever you see it within your kids or between you and your kid, point at it and connect the dots so that definition on a page of what debt is becomes reality in their world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then they have examples when they can go back and remember that moment. So yeah, that's great.
Hey, you want them to be remembering, I was in debt because I bought a Care Bear, right? So that they didn't like that feeling, so that they don't go into debt on a big dumb thing like financing a brand new car, and it's like a huge amount of their income, and it absolutely drops in value by half in the first 3 or 4 years. It's tough. You would rather them learn that lesson with a Care Bear.
Right.
That went down to 25 cents the day they brought it home. Okay? So what's another way to teach them about debt?
Yes. So another way is to learn scripture.
Okay? So do you have some scriptures that you would really want them to share that they would know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So share a couple of verses.
Okay, so first one is Proverbs 22:7. So you probably hear us talk about this one a lot, but it says, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender.
Yeah. So let's explain that slower. The rich rule over the poor. This is merely an observation. It's not a statement as if I stated it, therefore it's true. It's just observing facts.
Right.
The rich rule over the poor. The borrower is slave to the lender. That's a fact. So yes, when you have debt, you are subordinate to the lender. You must repay. You must do what the lender says, which is repay X amount at X interest until this amount is repaid. That is the definition of I owe, and I will not be released of that bond until it is paid in full. That is an understanding.
Yep.
And so very important verse for them to understand is that when you sign up for debt, you enter into this slave lender relationship. Very important. What's another verse?
All right, the next one is Romans 13:8, and it says, let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law.
So it's just saying, it doesn't say debt is a sin and debt is wrong. It's saying let no debt remain outstanding, except for that debt to love one another, which ultimately, when you boil it all down, right, the greatest of these three remain, what? Faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love, right? So love is so important. It's a continuing debt we owe to each other. But this debt, you should pay it back. That's what it's there for. You borrowed money, repay it. Very important. So learn these scriptures. Have them around the house. Put them on memorization cards because you want your kids to know that God's word speaks to this. And this book of wisdom, Proverbs, is full of other verses about money as well that you can teach your kids as well.
Okay. Another thing you can do is show them different types. Show them types of. Show I can't.
Show diffencast
in types of debt. Show differences in types of debt. I'm like looking at the sentence and it's not coming out as I'm seeing it.
Podcast episode number 147 is when Megan met her limit
of
podcast episodes. Yes. But maybe you'll have to sing for the current money events section earlier than episode 300. If you want that to happen, comment on the YouTube video right now. But you got to show them differences in the types of debt. You know, payday loans and pawn shop loans are different than loans on a rental house. So we put them in 4 categories. If you're part of Fully Funded Life, you know that. There's terrible debt. That's payday loans, pawn shop loans. You will not win with money if you have those debts. There's bad debts. That's credit card debts. That's where you're paying very high interest, 29%, 21.99% interest, and you're not paying it off every month. Better debt is like home mortgage debt. It's debt that is increasing in value, that the home is, and eventually will be paid off, and you'll have this asset. And then best debt is debt that someone else pays for you, and you make income off of it. That is rental income. It could be investment income into a business. But knowing those 4 different types of debt, terrible, bad, better, and best, really will help you teach your kids to be cautious and wise with any debt decisions they make. And the next thing, after showing them differences in types of debt, is to encourage great caution when acquiring debt. Why?
Yeah, because, I mean, like you just talked about, not all debt is equal, but all debt means that you owe somebody else something.
Yeah, so not all the debts are the same.
Yeah.
But there is one thing that is similar.
You owe.
You owe someone else or some other entity. So encourage that they have great caution. And I would also just add to that, to have huge margin. Debt with huge amounts of margin, cash on hand, hey, that can work. But debt with no margin is a recipe for dominoes to start falling, which usually ends up with somebody in bankruptcy court.
Yep.
And so the last thing that we would just say is to show them the math. Show your kids the math. Use a calculator, like our early payoff calculator, to show how much interest you avoid paying by paying off debt early. Show them the calculator that shows how much interest you pay over the life of a loan. Show them your home mortgage documents when you close, where it says, do you remember this? You just bought another house where they say, if you pay this off as scheduled, you'll pay this much in interest over the life of this 30-year note. And it's like
what?
It's like you paid for the house twice.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? So we hope that helps you in teaching your kids about money. Again, age appropriate. I encourage you to teach until your kids' eyes start twirling, and then press one step farther. It's okay if your eyes twirl, because at least they're making a little bit of memories of, I don't understand what the world they're saying. They're saying these big words. Back away from it and then come back again. It's learning in layers. It's like the onion. Teach it in layers, and overall, over time, by the time they leave the household, you'll have a kid who confidently knows what debt is, knows what good versus bad debt is, knows the joy of being debt-free, hopefully, and it'll be great things. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like we talked about, just make it simple for them. So the way that I'm teaching my 2-year-old right now is different from the way that Joe is teaching his kids, like we mentioned. But I can still educate him, and I can still encourage him, and I can still like teach him these principles. And then as he continues to get older, I can add more and more layers, like the onion, like you're talking about.
Yep.
And so I think it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to not do it just because you don't know the right words. So, I mean, I've always said, like, people have always told me, like, you don't not share the gospel because you don't know the words. Like, the Lord gives you the words. And so in this moment, like, because you don't know the words for how to explain this to them, like,
yeah, you don't have to know all
you don't
the
have to know
terminology.
them. Just like make it simple.
Say,
basic.
I owe money.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I don't want to owe money.
These are the things that we're doing
Here's
so that
why
we don't.
I borrowed the money.
Yes.
I was, and share that.
Yeah.
Mom and dad did not save up money for this, so we borrowed the money.
Yeah.
And in other cases, say, hey, we chose to borrow the money and then use our money that we did have for this other thing.
Yeah.
And then tell them whether or not you feel like it was a good decision or not. So ultimately, you can teach your kids about debt, and you will do a better job than any other teacher, any other financial teacher, any other class they will take. You are their greatest teacher, And as we said in the last time when we were teaching your kids, they will learn more from what is caught than what is taught. So live this out loud in front of them. They'll catch it. And that's awesome. Tell everybody what our quote is of the day.
Yes, our quote is from President Herbert Hoover. And he said, "Blessed are the young, for they shall inherit the national debt." I started reading, and I was like, this sounds
Blessed are the young, for they shall inherit the national debt. He's quoting a Bible verse, but putting his own language
stopped,
in
and I was like, and then
they shall inherit the national debt. Man, was he right. So tell everybody what we're going to be talking about in episode number 148.
Yes, so our next episode, we're talking about helping versus enabling. So you've heard teaching a man to fish versus giving him a fish. So we're kind of going to play that out in the financial sense. So helping versus enabling.
There you go. And if you like today's episode, please help us get this podcast to other people who could benefit. You can do this by quickly rating our podcast, leaving a review. The ratings and reviews help us in making our podcast better for our listeners and getting exposed to new listeners. If you're watching on YouTube, hey, leave a comment. Do you agree, disagree? How have you helped train your kids about debt? We would love to hear your tips. And also click the subscribe button, hit that bell, that reminder. It'll notify you every Monday so you can have a tip to help you make progress in your money journey each and every week. Until next week, hey, do one thing this week. Be intentional teaching your kids or grandkids about debt.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit iwbnin.com. We'll catch you next time.